As I've always said, there are no winners in sports. Only a bunch of losers. In this video, we are going to examine every NFL team's worst loss, and sometimes that doesn't always mean it was a game. Well, most of the time, it was a game. And all of that is coming up right after this. This is the most wonderful time of the year. No, not Halloween or the holidays. All four freaking major sports are going on at once. Yes, with the NBA back in action, you have more ways to play and more ways to win on Underdog, where you can use my code 5points, support this channel, and get a first-time deposit bonus of up to $1,000. Right now, it's Boosttober, so every day has a new promotion like unlimited site-wide boosts on NBA-only entries. So after this video, head to UnderdogFantasy.com and use my promo code 5points, or hit the link below and get started right away. Again, you can support this channel big time by heading over to UnderdogFantasy.com and use my promo code 5points and get a first-time deposit match of up to $1,000. We got like 25 activations. Let's get up to 30. You can do it. Arizona Cardinals. Yes, losing Super Bowl 43 on a last-second miracle catch by Santonio Holmes really hurts, but Larry Fitzgerald playing 17 seasons, all in Cardinal red, and not winning a Super Bowl ring is more heartbreaking than watching the end of Marley and Me on repeat. Larry Fitz only appeared in 5 playoffs, the last one coming in 2015, and that hurts more than a dick punch. The Atlanta Falcons. Yes, 28-3 was devastating, but losing prime Michael Vick years to dogfighting and then losing him altogether and watching him play well on the Eagles sucks pretty bad. Just kidding, it's 28-3. Y'all will never get over that shit, ever. Baltimore Ravens. Yes, the Ravens lost the 2012 AFC Championship game on a missed field goal, but then they won the Super Bowl next year, so it doesn't sting that bad. But Lamar's postseason struggles have been devastating, like last year when you lost to the Chiefs 17-10 because the NFL wanted Taylor Swift, and I can't think of anything worse than that. Buffalo Bills. Look, we all know the Bills lost 4 straight Super Bowls, but in hindsight, losing to the Giants in number 25 probably hurts the most, considering they were blown out in the other 3 appearances. I mean, Scott Norwood had a chip shot, and he blew it. That's gotta linger with you like a fart in an elevator. Carolina Panthers. Losing a Super Bowl on a last-second kick hurts, but seeing Cam Newton not dive on a loose ball when Super Bowl 50 was still in reach is devastating. That game was also incredibly frustrating to watch as a Panthers fan, as Newton got jumped on more times than Riley Reid. Chicago Bears. The Bears have had some devastating on-field losses, like when Jay Cutler got booed for not coming back into a game, but losing Jim McMahon in 1986 to a cheap shot by Charles Martin robbed the Bears of a potential return trip to the Super Bowl, and McMahon was never really the same again after that. The Bears finished their title defense season 14-2, but ultimately had to start Doug Flutie against the Redacteds in the playoffs and lost 27-13, which should have been a dynasty, ended up flaming out. Cincinnati Bengals. Yes, seeing Eli Apple getting burnt like a freshman his first semester in college hurt, but that whole season was house money. Nah, giving up a game-winning drive to the 49ers in Super Bowl 23 sent the team into the doldrums of having to endure Mike Shula as your head coach. Mike frickin' Shula. Cleveland Browns. Bottlegate is the most frustrating loss on the field, but losing Bill Belichick as the coach, and then the entire team, seeing the old team win in Baltimore, and then having this new version of the team being owned by back-to-back clowns is way worse of a loss than just one game. Sorry, the Cleveland Browns' worst loss is just existing. Dallas Cowboys. Just like the Cowboys winning a Super Bowl in the 90s, not many of you will actually remember this loss. Super Bowl 13 in 1979 turned out to be bad luck for them boys, as Jackie Smith dropped a wide-open TD late, which would have tied the game. Instead, they had to settle for a field goal and ended up losing 35-31. Also, every year Dak loses in the playoffs hurts, not just when it happens, but then Cowboys fans can't log into their socials for a month after. Denver Broncos. 70-20 last year was fucking hilarious, but that playoff loss to the Ravens in 2013 after their historic offensive season really hurts. Or was it the next year when they made it to the Super Bowl and got pounded like Iraq during Operation Iraqi Freedom?
We pounding them.
Detroit Lions. The Lions haven't had many devastating postseason losses. They like to take care of those really early into the season. But the most heartbreaking loss was Barry Sanders to early retirement, as he was the lone bright spot in an awful era in Lions history, and seeing him break the all-time rushing record would have at least been something to hold on to. Green Bay Packers. Remember when you were leading the Seahawks like all game, 16-0 at one point, and then there was that onside kick, and Bostic had a chance to catch it, and it slipped through his hands like a Rubik's Cube covered in butter? Or every playoff loss since 2010? Really, wasting 4 MVP seasons from Aaron Rodgers in the process? Those are painful losses. Houston Texans, blowing a 24-0 lead in a matter of minutes and realizing just how not elite your team was in an afternoon has left this team reeling. Ever since. The fake punt was the piece de resistance in an otherwise miserable franchise history up until the Strouds arrived. Indianapolis Colts. The Colts have a history of losing, in particular when it comes to quarterbacks. Andrew Luck retired early, and he was only there because Jim Irsay thought Peyton Manning was washed. But then you have to go back to the OG Colts diss when John Elway refused to play for the then Baltimore Colts, and it caused the team to move and horrible years in Indy. Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars were minutes away from their first Super Bowl appearance, and just like that, the refs and the world went against them. Just kidding, their buttholes tightened up like the Ocean Gate submarine, and they didn't trust Blake Bortles to make a single pass. Since then, the Jags have been nowhere near a Super Bowl run, and have had a full rebuild and a slew of coaches since. Kansas City Chiefs. Look, the Chiefs might be on top of shit now, but let me bring up some hurties. The Lynn Elliott game in 1995 when they were the top seed and lost 10-7 when all they had to do was make one of his 4 missed attempts. The Dee Ford game in 2019 when an offsides penalty erased a game-sealing pick. There was also a BS roughing the passer call on Tom fucking Brady. And then losing to the Bucks in the Pandemic Bowl in a thorough ass whipping by Tom Brady. Las Vegas Raiders. Speaking of Tom Brady, more BS luck from him in the infamous tuck rule game. As we all know, that was a fucking fumble. Then the next year they made it to the Super Bowl, faced their old coach, and got blown out while Barrett Robbins was in Mexico. Actually, that was worse somehow. Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers have been chargering a long time, but the ultimate chargering was in 2006 after a 14-2 regular season record. They lost in the first freaking round to the Patriots as the top seed. Had they been able to just win at home against a wildcard team, they would have had a clear path to the Super Bowl. And in the dumbest move ever, they fired Marty Schottenheimer and replaced him with Norv Turner. And the chargering continued to charger the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams' loss in Super Bowl 53 was not only terrible for the Rams, but it was terrible for America. Literally the most boring Super Bowl ever for one that was actually, at least on the score sheet, close. Like seriously, if I have insomnia, I put that game on. Watching Finance Bros talk is more interesting than that freaking loss. Miami Dolphins. 62-7 in Dan Marino's last game was as big a tragedy as Marino's entire career. He was excellent, but never got any help. Now that's a loss, but it's equally devastating every time Tua gets concussed, not only for his personal health, but also how bad the Dolphins automatically become without him in the lineup. Minnesota Vikings. People remember the Minneapolis Miracle, but what about the week after when the Vikings got absolutely dog-walked by the Eagles 38-7? But one even more embarrassing loss was the 2000 NFC Championship game where they were out of it from the opening snap and lost 41-0. That was one of the most fraudulent teams ever. And not many people remember the 4 Super Bowl losses, so if you were alive when that happened, have some oatmeal. The New England Patriots. The Patriots dominated for 2+ decades, so not many people remember them getting pissed on by the Bears in the Super Bowl. The fridge scored a touchdown. But recently, losing Tom Brady and seeing him win a chip was bad, but then Bill Belichick getting fired after losing his fastball from both a GM and an X&O standpoint leaves you in more disarray than a teenager's room. New Orleans Saints. Look, the Saints have had some bad losses like that missed PI call, but the most hilarious one took place in 2003, aka the River City Relay. After trailing the Jags 20-13, the Saints used 3 laterals to score a TD with no time left. John Carney then missed the extra point and the Aints lost. That team would finish 8-8 and miss the playoffs by 2 games. Brutal. New York Giants. As a Giants fan, losing Super Bowl 35 was pretty heartbreaking. However, that at least was the Super Bowl. To me, the worst loss for Big Blue was in 2008 to the Eagles, as the Giants dominated all year and then got smoked in their own building. They had no offense that game because their best receiver shot himself before the game. I'm still angry over that shit. New York Jets. There are a ton of Jets losses you can point to, like the 2010 AFC Championship game, but the biggest loss a Jets fan has experienced is their loss of dignity every morning they get up and put on a green jersey. That and the sense of loss they feel headed into literally every NFL draft, knowing their team is going to absolutely fuck it up. Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles fans and their coach have talked a lot of shit lately, but let's not forget that stretch of years where they consistently made deep playoff runs, only to come up short like a midget at a urinal. From 2001 to 2004, the team made the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl and then lost in some type of horrific fashion. Then they continued to make the playoffs and choke for 6 more years after that. It ended up chasing Andy Reid out of town, and then they hired Chip Kelly, sending them to the doldrums. Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers have had good fortune over pretty much their entire existence. Though every Steeler fan hates Neil O'Donnell, their biggest loss was the injury to Ryan Shazier in 2017. Losing him completely changed the complexion of their defense and ended up costing them for years to come. And directly that season, as they finished 13-3, but couldn't stop the Jags from scoring in the playoffs. They went from NFL elite to NFL Met in one season, and it's been that way ever since. San Francisco 49ers. Yes, blowing 10-point leads in the Super Bowl sucks twice, but the Niners losing their owner Ed DeBartolo to scandal has probably set them back further than you think. Yes, Jed York has gotten better, but you get the feeling that if old Ed had been running the show all these years, these close losses would have turned into wins. The Seattle Seahawks. You should have given it to Marshawn. Seriously, in terms of painful, stupid losses, Seattle, you win this competition. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. For the Bucs, it has to be their 26th consecutive loss, which happened on December 4th, 1977. It cannot get worse than that for a franchise where decades later, we're still talking about how shit you were back then. The Bucs lost 10-0 that day, the 6th time they had been shut out that season. The Tennessee Titans. Yes, 1 yard short is devastating, but losing Steve McNair too soon was just awful. And finally, our last team, the Washington Commanders. Super Bowl 18 was supposed to be a coronation of the Washington Redskins, as they were the defending champions, ready to face a lowly Raiders team which was representing the inferior AFC. You see, back in the day, the NFC used to dominate the Super Bowl. If there was sports betting back then, everyone would have picked the burgundy and gold, as they had John Riggins and a fierce defense. That shit did not happen. Riggo caught the flu before the game, and then Jim Plunkett and Marcus Allen took back their native lands, and not just an upset, but an absolute blowout, winning 38-9. Well, there you have it. If you made it this far, you might as well subscribe. I'm 5 Points Vids, and you made it to my next video.